Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here today with my friend Aswin Balaji to talk about Rahu and Ketu, the nodes, the lunar nodes in astrology. And this is the second video in sort of the mini series I'm doing talking about the nodes with different people, just exploring them and how they work and, kind of examining what people say about them and think about them and whatnot. And Ashwin himself is from a family of astrologers. He lives in India, and he's been studying and practicing astrology, probably since you were like a kid.
2000. No, I was listening astrology since I was young, but maybe it's like I didn't lend my ears in those days, but I really realized that I got attracted to it by mid 2011 or something. So,
Cool.
and firstly, thanks so much for having me, and your channel is shaping up beautifully, and I've been liking all
Thanks.
your videos.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
So probably
And-
it's good to have some real conversation after some unending phone calls that we had.
oh, okay. Yeah. All right, good. Well, yeah, I'm glad you're here. And for those of you watching, Ashwin is the founder and manager of Celestial Vibes e-magazine, which is a great astrology magazine that's just emerging on the scene. It's less than a year old at this point, and it's really shaping up awesomely. And I'm a regular contributor to it. You can find that link in most of my YouTube videos in the comments section, and I'll put it here again as well. And he also has his own podcast under the same name and his own YouTube channel. So check out Celestial Vibes. And yeah, I guess we'll just jump right into it. So yeah, Fernando and I in the last video, we talked about the nodes quite extensively, and we looked at philosophical and metaphysical kind of issues surrounding the interpretations of the nodes. And we kind of specifically focused on this notion of the evolving soul, and how if you watch that video, you'll find that Fernando and I reject the notion that the soul itself evolves or needs to evolve. And so we talked quite a bit about that, and we talked about some of the ancient traditions, and we talked a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita and things like that. And then we looked at some, we just looked at some ways you can actually interpret the nodes in the chart. And so we kind of just did a pretty nice overview, but now I wanted to get Ashwin's perspective, which is why I invited him on, and have a different and hopefully complementary conversation about the nodes to that last video. So with that said, I guess I'll hand it over to you and just sort of ask generally, what do you have to say about the nodes?
As it is from an astronomical point of view, they're just mathematical points, but they're not just
Sure.
mathematical points because they kind of influence the luminaries, which are the basic source of energy to Earth and also the entire universe or the solar system. So I think that kind of establishes the importance or significance that nodes has in terms of influencing the earthly bodies, and which is why eclipse occurs. And that let's not get into the scientific and astronomical explanation because I think
Yeah.
I think that's not why we are here. So I found initial and some parts of your conversation. I didn't watch the entire video that you did with Fernando Roll,
Right.
but I think I have a perspective of there is a lot of misconception. I won't call misconception, but because I have not kind of researched myself in that area, but there is an understanding that Ketu signifies past life and Rahu signifies our future. So I don't know if that is true, but I really found out that Ketu signifies detachment and Rahu signifies obsession and desire.
Yeah.
So that is something that, and at the end of the day, both are same because they are two sides of the same pole. So it's kind of we have to get obsessed with something, and we also have to detach from something. It's kind of a double-edged sword, and it's also kind of we are arguing against ourselves every time when we are talking about Rahu and Ketu. So
Sure.
so I think I have really found in my research that um, uh, we have something. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, as Newton said, and it
Yeah.
doesn't apply to real hardcore science, but it applies to real life as well. As Swami Vivekanand, a social reformer in India, said that there is, metaphysically speaking, whatever action we do or whatever decision that we take, it has an impact in our future, for
Right.
sure. So, and the nodes are really directly related to our karmic connections or karmic patterns. And having said, I don't really put karma, and I don't kind of stereotype karma only with past life or past life connections. But
Right.
karma is that kind of a thing that we have to fulfill or we have to do. Karma is to do, kri. So it's kind of
Right.
to do. So whatever we do, it is karma that I'm actually talking to you. It is karma that it is karmic. It is a karmic connection that we both got together. So
Right.
all these are karmic connections. Everyone we meet in our journey of life is in some way or the other is a karmic connection, and I think we are just instruments in terms of physical body, uh, sent by someone, something, or nature on this planet to kind of fulfill the deeds that nature wants us to. And
Okay.
soul doesn't evolve. I also say the same thing.
Okay.
uh, Evolution, I think it is attached to a physical human mind or human body or
Right.
human thinking. So once the physical body goes decay, the evolution stops, and then a new cycle starts. But
Yeah.
I don't know if it is really me who reincarnates again.
Right.
uh, I really don't know that because I've not done evolutionary astrology. So I'm not, but I know, I kind of have this. Uh, I kind of stand on the middle in terms of whether I agree with reincarnation or not, because I'm kind of skeptical about whether I kind of incarnate again. That
Right.
is, I'm not sure. So I kind of take middle ground in that, but I know that each and every action of us has an equal reaction in the future. So whenever I
Sure.
do something today or whenever I make a decision today, it certainly has an impact tomorrow.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what I really believe in.
Right. And that's something that's readily observable in everyday life that anyone can sort of test for themselves and observe and see that that is in fact the case. And it's funny too with karma, because I think a lot of people in the West have misunderstood karma, because it became this thing like, ooh, karma, like, ooh, you got yours, like, ooh, it's like a bad thing or whatever. But karma is a purely neutral principle. It's basically just the law of karma is pretty much just the law of balance. The universe abhors a vacuum. The universe is always in harmony, which is why it's always balancing things. So it's always going to fill that void, and it's always going to fill it in the laziest manner possible, because by lazy, I mean that the universe will exert the least amount of effort to get the highest possible result it can. And I've talked about before with people that that's the same thing when you're learning an instrument. Good technique on an instrument is utilizing the least amount of effort to get the greatest possible result, right? So the best technique and the best technicians make it look easy. They make it look like it's a piece of cake, because in reality, that's what good technique is about. And that's how the universe functions as well. And subsequently the law of karma, the law of balance, and so on. Something you were saying when you brought up the evolution of the soul again, and you were saying like it's more just like the mind and the personality self perhaps that evolves. I was thinking of like some of these stories of Krishna where like he's like a little baby and he's like eating dirt or something like that, and his mom picks him up and looks in his mouth and like sees the entire cosmos. And then, as Krishna's growing up, like there are these stories about him being kind of a troublemaker, like pretending to be like, dressing up and like trying to steal like ghee or something like that from the
Yeah,
gopi.
key.
right? Yeah,
Exactly.
he's like obsessed with ghee. He loves ghee, he loves it, and so he's like trying to steal it from the
Butter. It's
gopis.
butter.
And
It's butter.
yeah, it's clarified butter, right? And so but then of course when Krishna matures and grows up, he becomes he becomes this king and this ruler and this great warrior and this great advisor and so on. And so we can see that this great manifestation of God, who we call Krishna, is evolving as he matures as a human being, right? But if we think about the story of his mom seeing the entire cosmos by looking in his mouth, right? We know that from the beginning, Krishna was already, this divine personage. And it's the same for each and every one of us, just logically speaking, where the soul is always as it is. And, beyond that, the eternal spirit or oversoul or paramatman is always as it is. And so, but our external vehicles mature and change, and therefore we appear to evolve. But really, it's more just like we're just coming into what we already were and are eternally in an omnipresent manner. So that's kind of why I think, or that's a good, I don't know, there's just like another way to look at how it's not the soul that evolves, it's our mind. But the question becomes like, what do the nodes have to do with all this, And it seems,
Exactly.
yeah, and it seems to me that the nodes are just a really like deep-seated compulsion or karma or samskara, which is like a karmic behavioral pattern that influences us in a certain directions to think certain thoughts and to take certain actions, which then lead to certain realities. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. And as far as you said about Krishna, I think every good story deserves some really beautiful embellishments. So
Okay,
I
okay. Take it away. Yeah, take it away.
yeah. So you were asking like the impact of nodes in terms of
Just like, what do the nodes have to do with everything we were just talking about,
okay.
karma and evolution and
Yeah.
spirituality and
As
whatnot?
it is, we have had a lot of conversation talking about the fact that nodes cause a lot of imbalance in the place that it is placed. So
Right.
so the amount of imbalance uh, that we have to balance is kind of the karma that we are about to fulfill in our current birth. Okay, so let's not get into reincarnation, but I'm just saying the amount of karma that we have to fulfill is kind of it's kind of indicated by the imbalance that the nodes create when they are placed in a particular position in your chart. So
Okay.
Rahu deals with obsession, and there it is. It's kind of uh, too much of something, so it's not in proper balance. So, but when it comes to Ketu is always it always deals with contraction or detachment. So it is less of something. So it is always the nodes in terms of practical life always help us in dealing with balancing our karmic patterns and karmic connections in terms of what we do more and what we do less. But instead, we have to balance our everyday karma that we do. I just cannot make YouTube videos all the day.
Right.
So that's even though it is part of my karma, I cannot overdo something like that because
Sure. Yeah,
so,
because you don't have Rahu conjunct the moon, so you're not going to be making films all day, right?
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, and the most important thing in terms of analyzing how much imbalance or how much karmically Rahu and Ketu are related to ourselves, and in terms of our approach to daily life, has a lot to deal with what kind of connection these planets have with other planets and who is actually receiving Rahu and Ketu. So I think
Yeah.
reception plays a major role in terms of analyzing Rahu and Ketu in terms of dealing with karmic connections. So let's say when Rahu and Ketu are placed in when Ketu is placed in moksha houses like 4, 8, and 12,
Yeah.
uh, so it it kind of it is we tend to become an embodiment of especially in 12th house we tend to become an embodiment of detachment and we are kind of happy with our own spiritual self and our own spiritual understanding. I know a person who has, I know a person who I'm closely in touch with who has Ketu in 12,000. That person is completely connected to spiritual life, but in some ways they tend to become they tend to balance less when it comes to their family life or the life that is actually the life of grahastha. Grahastha means a person who is married and who is connected to his family. So Krishna says that being a grahastha is the best way to reach God. So these people tend to, since Ketu is the house of moksha and 12th house is the house of spirituality, and not spirituality but deep spirituality and attachment to spirituality and detachment from actual real world or Rahu kind of world. So by saying Rahu kind of world, I'm not saying that it is negative. I'll come back to that Rahu kind of world.
Right, and just real quick, if I could interject, like it's kind of like this idea that because the 12th house is like our unconscious, like our deep unconscious complexes are like deep-seated samskaras, like phobias and fears and things that sort of we expend a lot of energy on, right? We
Exactly.
have expenses on. If Ketu's there, Ketu sort of like burns that up and rejects that stuff. And so it's almost like the person with Ketu in the 12th may not have, like they either don't really have deep-seated complexes, or whatever sort of issues they do, they just may have an easier time like letting go of that stuff, right?
Exactly. Letting go is a very important word, because Ketu, wherever Ketu is placed, it kinds of helps us let go of those particular topics that particular house in your chart deals with. Okay,
Yeah.
so coming back to Ketu in 12th house, it gives an overdose of spirituality. And talking about the karmic connections and karmic patterns, we are constantly connected with those people who are also too much attached to spiritual or unconscious world, which is deep within their own self. And
Right.
this is again not negative, but they always tend to be blind to family life,
Okay.
which is the actual Gita, which is what Krishna says: be a grahastha and reach God. So that's the being grahastha is the most the greatest way to reach God. And for some reason or the other, people tend to forget their own other side of their life, which also needs to be balanced. And that is the imbalance that Ketu brings when it is placed in 12th house or even the moksha houses.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But 12th house is kind of a bit of overdosage in it. So I think I have the liberty to talk about my mother's chart. So my mother has Ketu in 8th house, and she's even though she kind of gets um, frustrated in terms of what's happening in her life, and kind of wonders why God does this to her. She promptly follows all the spiritual routine that she has. So,
Okay.
but that's not the Ketu. That's not the case with a person who has Ketu in 12th house.
Okay. Okay.
So
Interesting.
there is a little bit of
Yeah, K2 in the 12th house is like you're saying, like really detached, almost like I don't really care about the world at all. I just want to like, be in samadhi or have, bliss or have ecstatic
yeah.
visions of the divine, and it does create an imbalance. Like it's a good point, because even though Ketu is like one of the most auspicious placements for Ketu is in the 12th house, it seems like, according to the sutras and whatnot, it's still, like you're saying, it's a good point. It's an imbalance, and so is Rahu, as I'm sure you'll talk about in a bit.
Sure.
But what's interesting about Ketu, in light of what you're saying, is I've thought about this a bit, and it seems like it makes a lot of sense too. That like Ketu will not only like reject things, but it will like scatter things. It can sometimes be something that the person is like deeply avoiding and very afraid of, like a deep-seated fear of whatever Ketu is touching, because they just avoid it, and they sort of like, it's almost like they want that thing to be like transmuted to some like great like divine thing. Like they're rejecting the earthly manifestation of it and replacing it with some like really idealistic kind of heavenly manifestation of it. And then
Yeah, I don't know if
yeah,
it is idealistic. I don't know if it is idealistic, but I think it is even more than that.
or
So
like it's just, yeah, it's just in the ethers. It's just
yeah,
like if you had Ketu in like the second house, you know, like you might really really reject money, for example, and you
yeah,
might like really wish for a world where like Star Trek, where we don't have to earn money in the same way we do in this world to survive. And you may be really frustrated by money and by earning a living, and so you may like really patently reject that and that kind of a thing, you know.
yeah. At least money won't be a major thing in their life. So
You're
um,
detached from it, or
yeah,
you're just not interested in it because, you know, it's just that. And there's not necessarily like a reason. It's not a because um and a final say on it. It's just like, this is something you're just not really interested in for whatever the reason is, you know. And Ketu and Rahu can manifest very differently. But the final thing that I find with Ketu in this regard too is that, you know, people will call like Rahu destiny, but actually I think more that Ketu is more destiny, in the sense that Ketu is a place where we should sacrifice what we have for like the greater good, and like destiny in the sense of like doing something that's beyond ourselves, that's greater than ourselves. So like when you look at, like when I looked at like Van Gogh's and Beethoven's charts, you know, these two artists who like really, who really moved people, and who really just, they were nonstop creating, nonstop, like in a sense sacrificing or utilizing their inborn talents, right? Which is another Ketu thing sometimes, you know. And they had like a stronger Ketu, it seemed like, in their chart than Rahu. So they were just like doing these monumental, beautiful, wonderful things because it was their nature. You know, it wasn't like they were thinking about like, oh, I have to change the world, but they were like, in a sense, using their gifts to serve humanity by creating sublime art and music, if that
and
makes sense.
that's I think that is the actual spiritual manifestation of their interest or their life. So
Yeah.
again, we are kind of coming to the same point, because nodes are just two sides of the same pole. So
Right, right. So would you
so
agree with that then, generally speaking, like about the, like,
yeah, yeah.
have
I
you
think
noticed that, or?
each and every place has a desire, because Ketu signifies astrology in Eastern astrology, at least Vedic astrology,
Yeah, and Jaimini,
and
Jaimini says that too.
yeah, and that gives an addiction to uh, astrology. You see, um, I have Ketu in fourth house from sidereal point of view, and whatever I've done in terms of books is just astrology books. So, and fourth house directly related to reading, and I'm kind of addicted to that. I
Oh,
do
okay.
uh, I do 11 or 12 hours of day job, and I come back home and I have my table lamp, and I just sleep with astrology books. So
So addiction. So
that's
K2 is an addiction too. That's a
yeah,
good way to look at it. Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
but yeah, we were talking about I think Ketu in 12th and 8th, but if we look at what Rahu offers from the other end of the spectrum, I think we'll have a better conclusion to what we're
Okay.
talking. So
Great.
let's say now we have Ketu in 6th house, which gives, as you said, Ketu gives an unknown fear, and here 6th house is that unknown fear where these people might have some health issues, but they realize that they have some health issues, but they don't really want to go to a doctor, or they don't really want to go and have a checkup, because they are kind of afraid that they might have some kind of a long-standing disease or something. And this might be due to a habit or a lifestyle problem that they had in their life, precisely because Rahu in the other spectrum would have been in 12th house. And
Okay.
Rahu in 12th house is all about unfair spendings and expenses, where you are kind of addicted to drugs or alcohol or
Yeah.
narcotics stuff.
Yeah.
So
Actually, Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer, had Rahu in the 12th, and he was really, really perverted and addicted to perverted
yeah,
sexual things, you know, like like cutting up and eating people he had sex with, and just, you know, kind of some horrible, gross sexual things. And that's an extreme manifestation. It's not like everyone that has Rahu in the 12th is going to have something like that. But I think there's, yeah, Rahu in like the 12th and maybe the 8th, you know, you do kind of wonder about what sex is for that person. And it can be an obsession. Yeah, it can be an obsession.
Yeah, wherever Rahu is placed, you're kind of obsessed with the place where Rahu is placed, and that is the basic nature of Rahu. And I think that pretty much sums up what Ketu, and from the Ketu point of view, but coming from Rahu point of view, when Rahu is placed in 6,000, Ketu is placed. We already spoke about Ketu in 12th house,
right?
But let's talk about Rahu in 6th house.
6th house, yeah.
And, yeah, so Rahu in 6th house and Ketu in 12th house. Ketu in 12th house gives spiritual manifestation, and Rahu in 6th house gives victory and money in terms of professional income and winnings from legal suits or something like that. But still,
right, over enemies, right? Like destroying your enemies,
yeah,
or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, but you have so much of material in your hand. But Ketu in the 12th house doesn't kind of give you a vision in terms of what to do with that materialistic growth that you have. So that is another kind of imbalance that they have. I've seen so many people who have Ketu in 12th house and Rahu in 6th house kind of donate things to charity or orphanages or old age homes or something like that.
Oh wow! Okay,
that's a beautiful manifestation from a social point of view, but again from a family point of view. And coming back to the concept of grahastha, it is an utter failure where this person cannot see. They tend to give everything to others. Okay, and so
it's very good. It's a very good placement for like a sadhu or an ascetic. Unfortunately, the sadhus and ascetics of the past, the world doesn't support that as much as it used to. I mean, I'm sure you still have them in India, I would imagine at least, but you know, in the States, you're just looked at as like a homeless person, like a hobo or a bum or like a lazy, good for nothing, you know, whatever, you know. So in many developed countries, like the reverence that was paid to like ascetics and yogis who renounce the world is unfortunately receding. But at the same time, I'm going to get into some like esoteric kind of territory here. The Bab, who was a Persian prophet from the 19th century, who I believe was the last great avatar, basically, that came and visited the world. He himself was like many of the past great avatars, was, you know, married, and he was like, I think he was like a merchant, right? So he was involved in the world. And I don't remember that specific sutra or sloka in the Gita that you're referring to, like the Grahastha, but I know that Krishna says specifically, and this is again in alignment with, you know, even what the Bab was saying and doing with his life in the 19th century. It's the same thing. Krishna does say that to approach me, the divine, through the world is superior than approaching me, the divine, through the contemplating, para Brahman, which is without form. He says approaching God with form is superior to approaching God without form. And the reason, and so I think like that's what I remember, and that makes sense with what you're saying.
Yes.
It's whether or not it's literally about like getting married and having children. It's just about like being in the world but not of the world. And that's like the superior path to, rather than being like a strict ascetic or something like that, which is only for, I think, a select few kind of people. You know, there's only a few people that really makes sense for in a given lifetime too, if we accept a reincarnational theory.
Yeah, sure. I think that's, but everyone has their own perception in terms of what is spiritual life and what is not spiritual life. So I think I'll stick to what you just said, being with the world or in the world and then approach God.
Yeah, it's
And
like boga is yoga. There's that saying that they're really the same thing. And in Buddhism, they say, they will say that basically they'll talk about the single taste or the single flavor of samsara and nirvana. That in fact they're not neither exist. It's a false dichotomy to begin with. So they're really just one taste. One is always found within the other, and so you don't have to it's funny because Tibetan yogis especially have this rich tradition of going and like meditating very ascetically in caves for like 7 years at a time, or just years and years at a time, doing these retreats. I certainly have a lot of respect for that tradition. But what's funny is now like Westerners are trying to mimic that tradition, and it just makes utterly no sense because that's not what our culture in the US and Europe supports. It doesn't support going away for 7 years or 6 months or whatever, and just
this
leaving your life. It just doesn't, and it's not really the time to do that anymore. In this day and age, we have to be in the world but not of it, just as much, if not
exactly.
more, than when the events of the Bhagavad Gita and whatnot took place. So,
And that's what, as I think we already spoke about it a lot offline, the age of Rahu signifies be with the world and then
yeah,
reach God and get detached from whatever you don't want or whatever you don't need to, being with the world and reaching God. So, and I think we already spoke about this, but still, um people tend to kind of uh, blame Kali Yuga for making all the
bad
errors and
decisions. Yeah.
making all the bad decisions themselves. With people, people having Rahu in 12th house tend to drink too much and then say that like this is Kali Yuga and this is supposed to happen. But
Oh,
it's not.
yeah, sure.
It's not the manifestation of Kali Yuga, but it's the manifestation of our own self and our own
Yeah.
limitations in terms of evolving as a human and not evolving as a soul, because again, soul doesn't evolve.
Right, right. So returning to Rahu in the sixth, right? Like
Yeah.
it's basically what you're saying is that, well, I mean, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're talking about like where you have Ketu in the 12th, and so you have Rahu in the sixth, and you have to interpret them together, right? You have to you
No,
can't
I'm not saying you have to interpret it together, but you can
Oh,
see
okay.
the pattern. You can see the patterns in which uh, how exactly opposite these two planets in these two places signify. But again, they come to a same conclusion in terms of what we have to do and what we don't have to do. So
Okay.
we have so much of wealth, and Ketu gives the mindset to actually donate.
Okay.
So and see, I've seen again. I have an in-family example in terms of having Rahu in sixth and Ketu in 12th.
12th.
So
Yeah.
that person has a lot of. Uh, he had so many victories in terms of professional life, and he doesn't care to donate. He just
Okay.
you can just ask him his wallet and he'll give you. So that's done.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
so that's I'm not saying this is only possible when you have Ketu in 12th house. I know one more person who has Saturn and Ketu in 12th house, which is the house of Libra, and Saturn
Okay.
is exalted and Ketu is placed there, and that is that is even more. It is an overdosage, not just overdosage, but it is even further more than that in terms of hating the actual real world and going into spirituality. This person is a vegan. This person doesn't. This person doesn't want to talk to opposite sex, or
Oh my God.
whenever an opposite sex comes and talks, and this person is kind of basically thinks that he or she is a pervert and something like that. So
Well,
that is
I had a friend too who had K2 in the 12th with Saturn, like literally in the same degree. They were that
okay.
close together, and they also became like a rampant vegan as
Uh,
well. And they
so
also had like a strong, like they had more of a religious bent than like,
exactly, yeah.
but it was spiritual. It was a genuine, like, they were, they were more, they were Christian, but they were in some ways more in touch with like the spirit of Christianity or Jesus than actually the religion itself. So I see what you're saying, and yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah,
And
continue.
I have another example, like my own uncle has Rahu in 12th and Ketu in 6th, and he has problems with controlling his spending.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, okay,
so,
that makes sense.
and and Ketu is in the 6th, and and he is a multifaceted personality who is a practicing advocate. Uh, he's a doctor. He knows homeopathy. He knows acupuncture. He knows siddha. He knows Ayurveda, and he knows a
Wow.
lot of things that are basically signified by the 6th house. So all these are 6th house topics: the litigation and legal stuff. All these
Wow.
are
Okay.
basically 6th house topics, and Ketu there has kind of given everything to him in terms of the 6th house topics. But again, coming to the opposite angle, he whatever money he gets, he kind of throws it with Rahu in 12th. So
Okay, cool. Well, and I think this is a good time to point out as well that, we talk about Rahu and Ketu as these two extremes, obsession and either detachment or rejection, right? But then anything at two extremes become the same thing. So that which you're running away from or rejecting or detaching yourself from, you become ruled by on some level, right? You become obsessed
exactly,
with, in a sense. You become obsessed by rejecting it, and you become very much polarized by it. Whereas that which you're obsessed with and that you constantly chase after, right? That's something too that, like, once you get it, you're likely to be disappointed with it or reject it because you were so obsessed with the chase of it, and you were so obsessed with the idea of it. And then it's like that story of the sour grapes where, you finally, the it's like a Greek myth or whatever, where the you finally taste the character. I forget the myth, but the guy, if he finally tasted the grapes, like, and that he couldn't have, they look so delicious, but then he tastes them and they're
no,
kind of sour. They're not like juicy and plump and sweet like the person was imagining. So eventually, the Rahu stuff becomes the Ketu stuff, and the Ketu
and
stuff
Ketu
becomes
still
the
because
Rahu stuff. So
there is a very important astrological clue that we have here, because I found out that uh, whichever dispositor is strong tends to um, it tends to kind of uplift that particular node in a positive manner, and whichever dispositor is weak kind of pushes or pulls down the pole. and uh,
okay,
and
okay,
pulling down the pole is that the pole moves here, and whatever you had here will just flow through this. So that's
wow,
basically the Rahu Ketu kind of thing. And as it is, there is one person who has Ketu, Rahu in 12th and Ketu in 6th with uh, Virgo rising, and Saturn is pretty much in powerful position on the ascendant itself, and in a day chart. And 12th house, Rahu's dispositor Sun is debilitated in the second house.
okay.
So it's pretty much like this, and whatever you have here will flow through this, and there is no balance.
So you're saying that because the dispositor of Ketu is more powerful, that the life of the person has, like, what, a more functional Ketu and a more dysfunctional Rahu?
No, it's kind of functional Ketu at one phase, and when the other phase comes, the dysfunctional Rahu, not dysfunctional, but still the weak dispositor of Rahu is unable to control whatever is falling. So I'm
Okay.
just trying to say that
Yeah.
there is overdosage of one place and lesser contribution to the other, and which kind
Yeah.
of doesn't justify the balancing role, because we have to balance at the end. So the imbalance kind of stays.
Okay. It's more likely to stay. I see what you mean. Yeah, that makes sense. And um I guess, and it's interesting too, because, like, as we're discussing it here, it seems like our approach is more in line with the ancient texts and, what the ancient authors seem to be saying in both Hellenistic and Indian traditions, that, the nodes are malefics and the nodes act in this manner, this, like, obsession, compulsion, rejection sort of thing. And they're blind spots because they obscure the luminaries and whatnot during the eclipse.
Exactly.
So that's why I think that in and of itself explains like the whole thing about the nodes. Like we don't even have to get into the different myths if like we can just understand
Yeah.
that the nodes are primarily derive their meaning from the fact that they're the points where eclipses happen. And
Exactly.
that's it. And eclipses, of course, are like super, it's like a super new moon or a super full moon when you have an eclipse, and there's a blinding that happens. So there's an obscuring. There's like kind of a derangement. There's kind of
Yeah.
a
It,
strangeness. Yeah.
it can be uh, it can be an end to something great, or it can be a beginning to something great. So
Yeah. Yeah. I also like to think about the nodes because sometimes they're called the dragon. And so I like to think about the Ouroboros, the dragon or snake biting its own tail, So like it's like Rahu is actually just trying to bite his own tail in a sense. Like he's hungry for himself. He's hungry for like what he already is. And that's why I think Rahu, when it's wherever it's placed, it sort of symbolizes like a lot of dissatisfaction and even destruction, because it's like, again, you get those grapes and they really weren't that good. And so like how much do you have to like pursue this obsession before it finally dissolves and you can just bite your own tail and be satisfied, because that's who you already are. I was talking to somebody yesterday about like some people we know who are in this romantic relationship, and it's just like a horrible relationship in every aspect. It's just like terrible. Like these people should not be together, right? But it just reeks to me. I don't have their charts, but it just reeks to me of something node based, because they have this like obsession and then like rejection, obsession, rejection, obsession, reject, and it's just this like it's this compulsion. It's like why is he still with her? It's like there is no reason. It's just this compulsory thing that the more you try to suppress it, the worse it's going to be. And so, maybe eventually for people in relationships like that, they get to the point where they're finally like, you know what, this really does suck and it's not fulfilling, and I need to figure out how to love myself or whatever, and that's kind of going to the Ketu pole, like where the two are start to join together, perhaps metaphorically speaking, just metaphorically.
yeah, it's just two sides of the same thing. So
Two sides of the
and
same. Yeah.
yeah, and do you think I can just share a chart where
Oh
we
yeah,
can
of
see
course.
a little manifestation of Ketu? So
Yeah, let's do it.
okay, do you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, see, this is Leo DiCaprio's chart, who is the Hollywood actor. I'm sure everyone knows him. So I thought I would just start with this one so people can easily relate to what we are speaking. So see here, so this is the South Indian chart where we have Aries here. So if you can see the name mentioned here, it's Aries, Taurus, and it is the clockwise rotation of the chart, and
Right.
signs always remain the same on the ascendant or the rising sign moves. So
Right.
we have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and we have Virgo rising with moon on the rising sign itself. But the major part here is that Ketu is placed in the ninth house. Okay,
Okay.
and the dispositor of Ketu, Venus, is placed at 26, 22 of Libra, which is the Mula Trikona sign of Venus, and
Nice.
Venus is actually super strong. So, and Venus is also close to the Cassini point. So it's kind of a very strong Venus and strong dispositor. And here we see that Ketu is also super strong. And the way in which Ketu manifested here is during the Rahu and Ketu, Rahu Dasha and Ketu Antar Dasha. So that's where that is where Leo DiCaprio found the major break of his career in terms of being with Robert De Niro in This Boy's Life. It's the 1993 movie. It got released in the year 1993, and ninth house relates to guru or mentor. So we have the Lord of Venus, Lord of Taurus here in Libra. In Libra in a super strong position and dictating terms to Ketu, who also kind of signifies some kind of a jnani kind of, or a very spiritual mentor, or that kind of a
Oh,
thing,
okay.
who is a greater mentor. So
Cool.
so Robert De Niro has been a mentor to Leo DiCaprio in his early days,
Huh.
and DiCaprio had mentioned it in 2003 AFI Awards, where Robert De Niro won the Lifetime Achievement Award. So that came
Wow.
from Leo DiCaprio's words itself.
Yeah, I think I saw that too back when that happened. That was really inspiring to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and this is the and DiCaprio kind of defeated 399 people to become the first contender, or the first choice to play that particular role in this boy's life. And Robert De Niro personally chose him, and we know how Ketu kind of acted here, and also Mercury, not just Ketu, but Ketu kind of DiCaprio was De Niro was a perfect mentor here to just kickstart a great career, which we all know at this point of time.
Yeah.
So, and there is, yeah, please.
Oh, I just wanted to say too, like it's just I love looking at this stuff. Obviously, that it's like you also see that Venus sits with the sun, and even though the sun is debilitated, it's actually a cancellation of debilitation.
Exactly.
Venus is so strong, but the sun, of course, always has to do with like fame and career and notoriety, and so Venus ruling that ninth of mentors, and Ketu sits with the sun, and then probably again a strong, very strong karmic connection between them, simply because the nodes are just they're the deeper karmas. Everything's karma in the chart, but the nodes are a bit more strong or deeper. And then Venus sits with Lagna Lord Mercury, as well, which is a plus. And even the Lord of Rahu is in there as well, Mars. So that's kind of interesting. And then
that's kind of adding obsession, obsession to the actual karma, or the acting thing that he was doing. So
yeah. And then the other factor that I thought was interesting too is we kind of get a repetition of some themes where the moon is the exaltation lord of Taurus and Ketu, and it's in the ascendant. So again, that's just like another
that's another kind of reception. Yes.
And Venus even moves into Taurus in the Navamsha there, right? That's the Navamsha.
No, this is the Shamsha.
Oh, that's this. It says D9.
No, it's Navamsha. Yeah, it's Navamsha.
Yeah, so we have Venus becoming super, super strong by having dignity in both Rashi and Navamsha, and then of course it's even with Ketu in Navamsha, and it even Rashi aspects Taurus as well from Libra, if you use Gemini principles.
Yeah, Gemini, yes. So there is a lot of karmic connection.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes. So that's why
all those planets are aspected by Jupiter too. Wow, that's cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's a good Jupiter. Yeah.
Pretty much why I wanted to bring this chart here to show the actual to show the intensity of karmic connections that Rahu and Ketu signified.
Yeah.
Because of a strong dispositor. And I have another chart here. So it's this is, I don't know why it's taking forever to come.
It's an eclipse.
See, this is the progress chart, secondary progress chart of DiCaprio when he was doing the movie Titanic, and Scorpio's water sign, and Rahu's Scorpio's water sign, and Rahu is placed here, and Mars, who is dispositing Rahu, is actually placed in its own territory, which is Scorpio, and there is no wonder that he did a movie that is involving a lot of water. So, and finally he had to drown in the movie. So I think all these are indicating themes in terms of how the native is connected to Rahu.
Wow.
And the other major factor here is that this is just real life and not real life, and that is also signified by Rahu. It's just real life, which is illusion, but that's not the
Yeah, and a film is even more
exactly. Yeah,
illusory in a sense, or just as real if you want to go the opposite end. Are we, is the film really any less real than quote unquote real life?
I don't think so, but still,
No, it's not.
yeah, yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
But
and a lot of actors end up working out their karma through theater and film. Actually, that happens quite frequently. You can look at, you can see in Leo's chart certain things that will make sense more in light of some of his major roles in films than perhaps his actual personal life. And Rahu being in the third house in Scorpio could easily be one of those things where, yeah, he's on the ship, he's traveling, which is a third, ninth house kind of thing. And,
yeah,
third house is also about like, desires and at least in that movie, he's not only very desirous of that woman, but he's kind of like, isn't he kind of like a hustler and stuff? Like he's a thief or something like that. And
yeah.
so
He's an artist.
oh, he's an artist. Okay. Yeah. Well, oh, that's a third house thing too. Yeah. Painting.
Yeah, again,
So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, so we see it.
So,
It's fun to see that. Yeah.
and there is the final thing that I wanted to show. This is the secondary progress chart when he was 42 years old and he was doing the movie The Revenant, for which he won the
Okay.
Academy Award for Best Actor after a long time and a wait. So here we again see that there is ascendant has moved to Libra, and now the progressed second house, the second house of the secondary progress chart is going to be Scorpio, where we again have Rahu and Mars in a very close
Very close now. Yeah. Wow.
very close, and we know what kind of physical trouble that he had to undergo for shooting that particular movie, where they shot the entire movie in Western Canada in like minus 35 or 40 degrees
Oh, wow.
temperature in the wild. So, and he had to jump into the water or stream for multiple times to do various shots, and that again is signified by the second house of Rahu. And second house kind of brings into light the largest and some of the greatest discomforts that we might face. I think fourth house is also related to that, but second house is
Okay.
kind of very basic needs or discomforts.
Survival.
Where,
Yeah.
yeah, survival instinct. Yeah, survival.
Oh, I
stuff.
see. So he's doing extreme things with
Exactly.
survival in the movie. So
Yeah,
yeah, Rahu extremism in the second and
exactly.
survival. I see. Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point. And then we can also point out too. This is a whole nother topic entirely, but with secondary progressions, the fact that the Lord is so close to Rahu as well would theoretically activate those planets more powerfully in his natal chart, right? They would just
Yeah,
Rahu Mars stuff would become more prominent because of these progressions, and then we'd want to check it against Vimshotri and other dishas and so on. So that's cool.
yeah, sure. Um, I think that's pretty, yeah. And I also wanted to point out one more important thing
Sure.
where this even though Venus is dispositing Ketu here, for some reason I think this chart did very well, or the native did very well, because of the fact that these planets are not directly related to uh, the nodes in terms of aspect or something like that, and they are an
Yeah.
aversion as mentioned
Right.
in Hellenistic astrology.
The
These
Hellenistic
planets,
aversion. Yeah.
yeah, these planets are an aversion. The planets in the second house are an aversion to the nodes, and that kind of brought a very good balance in terms of dealing with professional life.
Huh. Okay, that's an interesting idea. Cool.
Okay,
Cool.
so
Cool. Wow.
yeah, do you want to add something?
I don't know. I would just be. I don't know much about Leo's personal life, but I kind of would wonder if maybe he'll end up, converting to some kind of religion or philosophical point of view that he didn't grow up with. Because I have observed in a few charts where either where Ketu was in the ninth from the ascendant or in the ninth from the moon, the person converted to a religion that was really, really far into their upbringing and even their culture.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think maybe,
Or
yeah.
they left their faith. They might have like in some ways like left their faith or have doubts about their faith and want to explore things in a more personal sense, which is the third house. You know, they're like, well, what do I actually think of this instead of what is everyone else saying? So I would be curious if that happened or if that might happen to him or something.
And you see, you have Ketu from both the ascendant and also the moon. So I think that
Yes. Yeah.
this adds this adds a lot more diet to whatever you said.
Yeah, sure. So,
So yeah.
yeah, we'll
So
see. Anyway.
so I'll stop.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I think that pretty much wraps this video up. I think that we just covered some really awesome, excellent ways to use the nodes, and it's like the thing I like so much about what you're bringing to the table here is that it's a very non-linear way to employ the nodes in astrology and interpretations. It's not so much this linear thing that we keep finding of like one's good, one's bad, or one's the past, one's the future. It's more, and it's not so much like piecing together the different meanings of the houses in like a sort of awkward way of like of again saying things like, oh, if you have the north node here, you should be doing these things. It's more just like this is kind of how the energies take shape and influence the life, you know, like Rahu in the 12th is not about going towards 12th house things. It's just about that the person might have trouble with expenses or might become addicted to escapism or some kind of like, you know, sexual or blissful thing, or they might screw that stuff up for themselves and have like a difficult time sleeping, or just, you know, any of this kind of stuff. It's not so linear. It's just like this is life, you know, this is life, and what are you going to do with it? And that's kind of the vibe I get from the way you use them. So I think
sure.
Cool. Any last words for you for this video? Not for your life, for this video. Any final words, Aswin?
Final words as it is. I just hope I brought something useful to this video. Yes. And
absolutely.
And I hope I managed my karmic imbalances in the right way to help it balance.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, on that note, guys, be sure to like this video, subscribe, share it around. Check us both out on Facebook. I'll be putting several links in the description of the video. Like I said, I'll be putting all of Aswin's web pages and whatnot in the links. And, you know, just stay tuned for more on the nodes and more on astrology and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, have a really wonderful rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are and what time you're watching this. All right. See you later, Aswin.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.